This video I am going to share with you what's the reason behind buying commercial property. Why commercial property is so lucrative in the year 2025. This is the third reason that I am creating this series. So if you did not watch the previous two reasons, just go watch the previous videos that you will understand those two reasons as well. So this is the third reason why you would be interested into commercial property, particularly in 2025. Now, if you own a residential property, you probably know that you have a tenant in place and that tenant is paying the rent and that's it. They don't pay any other extra, any other things. They just pay the rent. Now, what happens if the tenant just did not pay the 3 or 4 weeks of rent and they're just a little bit of behind? You can chase up, you can threat them, and you can say that, oh, I will not renew your lease. Okay, the government will protect the tenant even though their rent is little behind. So the third reason that I wanted to say why commercial property more lucrative than residential property is the government interference, which is like each state in Australia has their own rules. And whether QCAT, NCAT, VCAT, wherever, if you sue the tenant and then you take them to this NCAT, QCAT, VCAT, almost every time tenant wins that, unless you have a absolute reason that either tenant is not paying the rent for significant amount of time or they have damaged something significantly, they always win this case. Which is why the residential property has more of a government backings, but that is not the case in commercial property. Now, to give you a concrete example, if you have a residential property and that residential property is, let's say it's tenanted, and for the last 2 months tenant did not pay rent and then they just move out without telling you. Of course, your property manager, they followed up, they give them breach notice, they make sure that notice to vacate and all sort of things, yet they just didn't pay and they just move out. Now that 2 months of rent is, let's say, about $4,000 or $5,000. And you could talk about that, oh, I would chase them, I could sue them, I could do all sort of things. But your property manager needs to work on that. You have to pay on top of this to the property manager to act on your behalf and do all these legal cases and submitting the case to QCAT and probably chase up insurance, probably another third-party company to get that debt collected from this tenant which is not traceable. Eventually what you do, you just fed up, you said, oh, you know what, forget it, let's just fix the things and retenant the property. And that actually happens almost every time. I have been investing in residential properties for over 10 years. And I am so fed up of these residential properties. Now I am selling one by one because of one of the reasons is this government interference of the tenant friendly things. It's more of a tenant who has more rights in residential properties than the landlord. So this is the reason that we need to shift to commercial properties, because in commercial property there is no such thing called government backings. It's the landlord who dictates. If the tenant does not pay the rent, you can sue them. And remember, commercial property rent is generally higher than the residential, and commercial property also, they're the business people, they're doing the business there. So there's a very unlikely that they're not going to pay the rent and they just move out and that they're going to, that happens very, very rare. As compared to residential, particularly where did you buy the property, it's quite common to the tenant did not pay the last 3-4 weeks rent and this is move out. So government interference is one of the reason which we need to shift, or we need to, the commercial property is more lucrative in 2025. And I am predicting for the next 4, 5, 10 years this is going to be more and more, that government is going to interfere about this tenancy, and in a way that it will be more and more favorable to the tenant and less favorable to the landlord. In commercial property, there is no such thing. If there is a dispute happens, there is generally the court case. It goes through the lawyer, and mostly landlord is going to win as long as if as per the lease whatever they are supposed to pay, if they are not paying it. So, and because it is the higher amount, let's say if your tenant did not pay, there is a 5 years lease that they have written, and after 2 years they're moving out. They have to pay unless you find another tenant who can ready to take it up, and whatever loss that is happening, you can sue them. And if that loss is, let's say, $50,000 or $100,000, you can sue them and get that money from the tenant. That is because in residential property is only 2000, 3000, 4000 kind of payment, it's not worth chasing because of your expense that you have to spend anyway to get that 2000, 3000 dollar back, which is why commercial property is more of a landlord friendly thing and residential property is more of a tenant friendly thing. So I would say that's one of the reason commercial property is more lucrative than the residential property. If you find these videos helpful, please do me a favor, like this video, subscribe my channel and turn the notification bell on so you get to see more videos about commercial property. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye bye.